All right, good morning, everyone. Tonight is going to be Shvi Shel Pesach, and the custom is we stay up all night, Shvi Shel Pesach, so, or at least until Olas HaShachar, which you'll see when that is the first glimpses of the sun. We'll see when that is. But here we have a sikha, a speech, a mimer from the Rebbe, from the Likuti Torah. A mimer from Likuti Torah, and it talks about the splitting of the sea. That's what happened on this day. It's the final day of Passover, the day when the sea split for the Jews, and the Egyptians pursued them. And as soon as all the Jews got out of the river, the sea closed back on the Egyptians and killed them all. And after that was washed up on the dry land, miraculously, all the jewels and treasures that the Egyptian army took with them, because they thought they were going to defeat the Jews, so they were ready for a big party. They were thinking positively, and instead, it ended up that they all drowned. Their positive thoughts and their coaching lessons or seminars, whatever that they took, or they taught them to think positively, but it didn't bring good results. So they were all, okay, now it says when the sea split. So this is a thing you don't see every day, sea splitting, even though it says in the Talmud that there were some of the wise men of the Talmud that split the sea. It says it's a story of Hanina ben Dosa, I think he split the sea. But nevertheless, here's an amazing thing. The sea split for all the Jewish people. There went across the sea about 3 million people. And in fact, they didn't even go across. They just went in and made like a sort of a horseshoe U-turn. And they came out on the same side that they went in, miles down. So the reason that the sea split was to give the Jews a foretaste, a little bit of a taste of the revelations of God. Oh, 1 second. They were going to be at Mount Sinai, because the whole essence of the Jewish people is to reveal God in the world. That's what the Jewish people are here for. That's why they were taken out of Egypt, and that's why they received the Torah. It was in order to fix up this world, make this world the ideal place, the place it was supposed to be when God created it. And so it says an interesting thing over there. It's in the Psalms. It says, Yom Rav Yanos, says the sea saw, and it ran away. It ran away. What do you mean it ran away? It split. Hahorim, and the mountains, Raktu Ke'elim, and says the mountains, they danced like goats, or like mountain goats or sheep or something like that, or deers dancing around. Hine, behold. So that's how King David explains the what happened at the splitting of the sea. So that the sea ran away, and the mountains danced like happy goats or something. So what does this mean? Let's make this a little bit bigger, make it easier for me to read. What does it have to do with us? What do we care what happened back then, that the sea ran away? The mountains danced. What does that mean? I don't know. In general, it's a big question. Why did God have to split the sea? I mean, if God just wanted to take the Jews out, so let all the Egyptians just fall asleep and the Jews just leave, What was the big deal he had to split the sea for? And not only that, like I say, the Jews didn't really even go across. They just went through the sea and they came out on the other side. So what was the whole purpose of it? They didn't really even accomplish that. The sea didn't really help them to get out of anything. They didn't progress to the land of Israel. So the answer that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gives is that the whole purpose of the splitting of the sea was to get the Jews used to doing what they're supposed to do, what their obligation is, and that is to reveal God in the world. Now, when God is revealed in the world is not exactly the same as it is now. And now people live and they're all uptight for about the future and what's going to happen, and people desire, they live for all sorts of strange things. People get depressed. In the future, there won't be all this pressure and depression and things like that. We'll see what a miracle every instant is and what a miracle every person is. And it'll bring out the good in everybody. But and that began when the Jews left Egypt. They got away from the bad. But when the sea split, so there was a big revelation of good, of godliness. It says that all the waters in the world split. So there was a tremendous revelation of the Creator in the world. So it says, Hine, we have to understand, why did the mountains dance? What's King David talking about over here? The mountains danced. Why in the world would the mountains have to dance? And in the book called the Shlav, it's called Shnei Luchot Hebreos. It's a book written by Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz about 350 years ago, something like that. It's Maseches Pesukim. He explains like this: Anisa, that running away, that the sea ran away, this is from fear. And the dancing that the mountains dance, this is love. This is like a minister and a servant. A minister, he serves the king from love. He appreciates the king. And a servant doesn't appreciate the king. He hasn't got the ability to, but he serves from fear. The king is just awesome. So when the king is revealed, then there's this level of the ministers. So then the ministers, when the king is revealed, then the minister becomes happy. This is the mountains. These are the aspects of Atzilut. The mountains, these are the highest aspects of godliness. I'll talk about this in a second. Shemisham Shoresh and Neshamas, there come from the souls. There come the souls which are called Achim. These are souls which are called brothers to God. Kasar Lifnei HaMelech, like a minister in front of the king, therefore they dance. To Bechinas Eved, but the level of a servant, that its service is in fear, Azai Bizgalas HaMelech, when the king reveals himself to the people, then everyone else who's not the ministers of the king, the servants of the king, they have a tremendous fear. Because the king is just a different type of a human being. That's what it means, the sea, Shemisham Shoresh Bechinas Ka'eved Lifnei HaMelech. This is like a servant before the king. That's the sea. Okay, what's going on over here? The Jews were taken out of Egypt. Human beings are created for a purpose. And it was the essence of man is responsibility. Every person feels deep, deep down that they're here for some reason or other. Every human being. The Jews are supposed to be the prime example of this. The Jews are supposed to be the ones that they really feel that man is not here. Man is just not like an animal, like a cow or just a complicated cow or a dog with psychological hang-ups. Like, human beings are a totally different sort of being than animals are. Animals have no responsibility. Animals don't feel anything pulling them except for themselves. They just want to satisfy their own needs. And the modern American or whatever it is, modern society says that human beings are just like animals. You just have to satisfy your needs, keep away from pain, come closer to pleasure. But that's a big mistake. It's a big lie. It's a big error to think like that. But basically, that's what everybody thinks. In fact, even all the religions are thinking just about yourself. You're just here in order to go to heaven. Something like that, just for yourself. But the fact of the matter is it's not so. Those are all not. Those are not true. That's not true. The goal of life is not just to receive. The goal of life is to serve the Creator. That's the goal of life. What does the Creator want? That we should improve the world according to His standards. What does it mean to improve the world? To make the world more healthy, to make it world more godly. It's pretty much, we don't even know what that means nowadays. I mean, there's so much darkness. It's like people who are drug addicts or something. They just don't know that there's any alternative. But the fact of the matter is that there is. And the Jewish people, when they were slaves in Egypt, they also thought there was no alternative. That's what means being a slave. Being a slave means that you're trapped in a lower level than who you really are. A human being is trapped into thinking he's an animal, or an animal is trapped to being a plant. You take an animal and you put him into one place where he can't move around. So he's imprisoned. Right? An animal doesn't matter that much, but a human being, for sure it does. But you get used to it. You get just animalized. So when the Jews got out of Egypt, so suddenly they realize that they have a responsibility, that they're here for a reason, that they're created, and that the world is a creation, and that God wants us to improve the creation. That's what happened when the Jews got out of Egypt. So when did God give them this first blast of responsibility? And to be responsible, you have to be responsible to someone. So when did they get the responsibility to the Creator? When did they get this? Especially when they went over Yam Suf, the Kriyas Yam Suf. When they went over Yam Suf, when they were going out of Egypt, they were just interested in themselves, just getting out. But they're coming closer and closer to Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, the whole thing is Mount Sinai is serving God. So they got a big revelation of what does it mean to serve God. Their first introduction to serving God was at Yam Suf. At Yam Suf, the Red Sea, whatever you want to call it, then there was a revelation of God. And then there was the Jews got an awareness that they're here for a reason to serve God. Those souls which are very high, sensitive souls, they had a feeling of love. They saw how good God is. They never dreamed God was so good. Those souls that were more mundane, like that's 99% of people, as they had fear, they never dreamed God was so awesome. So it says that's represented by the sea running away. That's like the simple people. And the mountains, that's like the big, the talented Jews, talented as far as feeling God goes. Those Jews, they danced. They were happy. Okay. So here we go. Listen. Well, let's understand this in an excellent explanation. Hine. First of all, let's explain what is the seventh day of Passover. The seventh day of Passover, that was the day when the sea split. And it's explained in a Kabbalah book by the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. It's called Pri Etz Chaim. Shugam Kein Inyan Leidat Aneshamos. This is the birth of the souls. That's what it means. The Jewish people went on the dry land in the sea. What happens when a child is born? So the child beforehand is in the umbilical, what's it called? The waters or something. And then the waters break, and then the child is revealed. So the same thing with the souls. The Indian is like this. The souls. The souls are created. Your soul, my soul, we're created. The soul is created. So it says the souls. The Jewish souls rose up in God's thought. As then they're called brothers and friends to God. The Jewish souls, as they are in their source, they're called Achim V'Reim. They're called brothers and friends to God. What does it mean? The Jewish souls are like brothers and friends to God. Hainu liot ki HaKodesh Baruch Hu, because God is bechinat, or is infinite light. Ki she melubash, but when God is is infinite light, is enclosed in his emotions of Atzilut, of this highest of the four dimensions of existence, which are called Atzilut, Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. These four levels. When God is in Atzilut, because God himself, Lo Mikol Minus Kalal, God cannot be defined in any way, in his essence. Below Yitachan, it's not possible to say on God's essence a name at all. That which there are names of God, names of God, Elarak al. That's why when God gave the Torah, for instance, the first of the 10 commandments is I. God just said I, Anochi. There's no name, God's essence. So on God's essence, you can't call it any name. Rak al Bechinas Yizgal is only the aspects of God that he reveals. Then it's called Havaya. Then he's got a name called Yud Ke Vav Ke. These are all these ideas of Kabbalah. What are the ideas of Kabbalah? God creates the world. So God's essence is totally above any existence. He creates all existence. But on the other hand, he creates the world. So if God is so high, so who's creating the world? So to explain that in fact it is God himself that's creating the world, but nevertheless we don't see God and we don't feel God. We haven't even got any idea what God is, not whatsoever. So there's all these spiritual levels which are in between. And all these spiritual levels, and those are the different worlds we see, Atzilut and Bria, and that's what's called God's 10 sfirot, God's 10 aspects. Okay, so but after all, God does create the world, and we Jewish people are called the sons of God, the servants of God. We have a special relationship with God. We're called brothers of God, called friends of God. Hine, behold, something, because we have to keep two things in mind. Well, first of all, we're talking about God, so we don't know really what we're talking about. And we're talking about God's love and God's fear. So we're talking about infinite love, infinite. We're saying on the other hand that the Jewish people, they're the sons of God. So that's like a metaphor which implies that God has children. What does that mean? God has a wife. What's going on over here? What does it mean? So those ideas are explained in Chassidut especially. Chassidut especially. So you don't get some sort of an idea that God is like this big spirit and that God has a son and he had a wife and he had all these other things. And there's like 2.5 billion people that believe that. But don't believe it. It's not so. But what is so? So it's not really comprehensible what God really is. On the other hand, this is the most simple thing in the world. Here we are. So it says the 600,000 souls of the Jews, which come from what's called 600,000 letters of God's thought. Those are the 600,000 letters of the Torah, it says, which if you count the letters of the Torah, there's not 600,000, but there's ways of counting it. That you count the vowels and other things. Excuse me. Anyway, excuse me. And they're called brothers of God. So where are the Jews called brothers of God? Not in God's essence, in the emotions of God. Ukamo al derech mashal, like the thought, machshava and thought. Shekol seichel, shekol sha'otiot, all at the time that the letters are one with a person's mind, with the person's mind, which is the became machshava, and also all the time a person's mind, his thoughts are united with his emotions, machshava amidos, with the emotions, as in bechinas elokus, then there's pure godliness. Elokus, because in God, in Atzilut, which Atzilut is like the highest level of godliness that's revealed, God and his life and his bodies, the lights and the vessels are all one. Okay, so the Jewish people then arose in God's thought, and when they're in God's thought, they're totally one with God, and they're called brothers of God. Achim, in order that the souls should come down and to be revealed, bechinas nivra, in a revealed way, shehu bechinas nifra, that it seems to be separate from God. Me'ayin, it seems to be separate from the infinity of God. When the soul is in Atzilut, it is pure godliness. But that's what's called the letters of thought. if this is just just so that we'll have some idea, a little bit of an idea what we're talking about. On one hand, God is infinitely close to us. On the other hand, we're infinitely far away. So God is infinitely close in a revealed way before we're born. The Jewish people arose in God's thought. But after we're born, God doesn't seem to be revealed anymore. It's not revealed anymore. So it seems maybe there's no God, maybe there isn't. So it says then, the Jewish people rose up in God's thought. God's thought is not like human being thought. Who al yedei midas malchuto, something like God's kingship. She'enika lavush, this is a garment which conceals and hides. It seems to be something separate. So Hashem Melech Geus Loveh. So here we have two opposites. On one hand, God is infinite. On the other hand, it's a commandment to understand God. That's the motto of Judaism. Shema Yisrael. Shema means understand. Understand, Jews, that God is our God. God is one. You have to understand God. How are you going to understand God? So it says, work your way up from the bottom. We're here, right? God is creating us. You understand that? No. You have a soul. Your soul comes from God. You understand that? No. Don't understand that. Well, I mean, you don't understand your soul. So your God is something like your soul, right? You don't understand what your soul is. And that's what God is. God is something like your soul. He's there, but you don't understand it. Right? It says, okay, that's good. Now we're talking about what is the soul before it comes into your body. Before it comes into the bed, then it was even more spiritual. Then it was even more spiritual. So it says, then it was even more one with God. So all of these aspects of God are really one with God. But on the other hand, they're aspects of God. Okay, so again, we're talking about things that in a way that we haven't got permission really to talk about, because it sounds almost like blasphemy. You think God loves somebody, God likes them, we're the sons of God, God is a person. Of course he's not. But nevertheless, it's true. Because, for instance, God being a king, the fact that God is a king, we say it 100 times a day, a king. That God is a king, this is just a garment. This is just a garment. 1 second, we're too far. It's a garment, hagorim, which causes to be that things seem to be separate. Because there's no king without a people, and God wants there to be a people. So in order to do that, God conceals himself. He wants there to be a world, and that the world should serve him. Namely, they should seem to be separate. Davka, Shalem, Yitachan, only on them can be a king. And the people, they should have the awe of the king. Hari al mea banim, but on 100 sons, lo yikra av melech. If a father has 100 sons, he's not called a king. He's still called a father. Lochen nikra malchut. Therefore, the king, this aspect of God's kingship, is called Yam. Why is it called a Yam? Kihine. Everything that's in the dry land is also in the sea. Raksha ain't near line, you just can't see it. Because the waters of the sea cover over it. Also the same thing above. God conceals himself from us, right? These letters of God, osios, when God spoke and he said, let there be light, let there be a firmament. These words that God spoke are eternal. This is above time. This is before time was created. These words of God are in heaven they're in the heavens forever, and they enliven all the worlds. They enliven all the worlds. These words of God that He spoke. This is called the world of Atzilut, and this sea, which is the level of Malchut, that's the lowest aspect of Atzilut. This covers over them, built to Yitkanisha, that they shouldn't be revealed to Christians, just like there's big fish and all sorts of big squids and whales and things like that in the sea. You can't see them because the sea covers them over. That's from looking down, but looking up, it's the same way. There's all these angels and levels and whatever, and we can't see them because they're covered over. That's what's called Malchut. That's this aspect that covers them over. It's Malchut. The lowest aspect of Atzilut. Because if the upper worlds would be revealed, that the spiritual worlds would overcome the physical. These are just different aspects of existence. Different aspects of existence. Right? It's like if you take a person, let's say that's has a poor person in the street that has nothing, and suddenly give him $1 million or $1 billion, he wouldn't know what to do with it. All he's got in his pocket is $10. $10 is not so different from $10 billion. It's just 10 and multiply it by $1 billion. But nevertheless, when he gets this, he becomes a different person and he doesn't know what to do with it. Right? He goes crazy with it. The same thing is with the world, but even more so, because $10 billion is comparable to $1 billion, to $10. But the reality of this world is incomparable to the reality of the upper worlds. It says if one angel appears, we saw over there with Abraham, that one angel destroyed this whole metropolis of 5 big cities, right? Sodom and Amorah and all this, because the reality is just too much. So he says that's this aspect of King of Malchut, of the sea of God. It covers over so that the world can be something separate. Kach Gashmi is also the physical world, which is being created. Hayabatal Makoro would be negated in its source if this Malchut would be revealed. The Shaliot Metziut Neshama Umalach, there wouldn't be able to be any souls or any angels. She'em, they're separate. Rak She'em Ba'ava. They're separate beings, but they love God. Why are they separate beings? Because God conceals himself. That's this aspect of Malchut. That's the sea. Why do they love God? Because God reveals a little bit to himself. So they feel, wow, I'm so grateful to God. He's creating me. That's the angels. But when God is not revealed, Bariya Mamish, seeing them, and this concealment comes by Malchut. This is a general principle. Malchut, that this aspect, the lowest of the 10 sefirot, this aspect of Malchut, in the Torah, it's called God's speech. God spoke. That's Malchut. This is what causes the world to seem to be separate. Therefore, it's called Ematato. It's called the lower mother. Kamatronisa, just like a mother. It could be this matronisa aim. I don't know, maybe it's a double, maybe it's a printing error, maybe not. Anyway, aim abanim, the mother of the children. Look, and therefore the souls, which they are the level of Ibur, the souls when they are before they're born into the world. In Malchut, in this aspect of Malchut, ki Shmini Atzeret, and it says that in Shmini Atzeret we say Morid Geshem, we bring down the rain. Shenim Shachim Neshamos, then the souls come into the womb and they wait there for 7 months, and then they come to Pesach, and that's the time that the souls are given birth to. Now, don't think I understand this, because I don't understand it. It says the same thing in the Tanya also. What does it mean the souls are born? It says that almost all the souls nowadays are not new souls, they're old souls. They're souls, we are reincarnations. So what does it mean that the souls are born and reborn? I don't know. Let's just say for our purpose, this is the first time that the souls came into the world. Al derech mashal, similarly, begashmius sheliot ithabut mehut vlad. In order for there to be a child from the tipa, from the seed of the father, there has to be a delay 7 months in the womb of the mother. That in this time, it eats and it drinks what its mother eats and drinks. This is nimshach. Then it's drawn down all the life until it makes it a separate being. Okay, so generally speaking, this is, let's suppose that we're new souls. Where do our souls come from? It says the souls is a process by which the souls are given birth. God is a process. Everything is a process in the world. The souls, just like bodies are born, and the bodies have to wait in the womb of the mother, so also the soul has to wait. The soul has to wait in what's called the womb of Malchut of Atzilut. That's where the souls are waiting. So the souls are waiting there. It says that the beginning, it's a 7-month process that starts with Shmini Atzeret. That's the last day of Sukkot. 7 months later, the souls are born, and that's Shvi Shel Pesach. That's when the souls actually come out to be born. Not that they're born into the world, that they're potential, that they can come into being separate souls in the world. Kacha neshamas also the souls of Atzilut, that this is the level of ayin. This is what's called complete being dissolved totally in godliness. Because they, in order, sheitaveh, that they could come out to be separate individual souls and not dissolved in their source in godliness. This is by means of ekavet. It has to delay in the rechem of nukba, to wait in this malchut of Atzilut for 7 months. And it eats and it drinks what its mother eats, etc. Shenim shachdir, there's drawn down all these high, tremendously high lights. And on the 7th day of Passover is the birth of the souls. That's the idea of the water splitting and the Jews finally getting out of Egypt. In order that there should be this level of birth and the opening of the womb, that the soul can come out from its concealment to be put into the world, there has to be drawn down from someplace very high. Something has to be a tremendously high level. This whole process, you might say, yes, it's a natural process. It's a natural process, and it happens just like mad. But the fact of the matter is that birth, giving birth, is a very amazing miracle. This is something like also, the Rebbe said that we should celebrate our birthday. And the Ben Ishchai also used to, other great rabbis used to. But if you think about it, what's so great about a birthday? A birthday, there should be conception day. Right? It should be conception day. You can make a calculation of approximately when the child was conceived, and that's when you should visit. But the birthday, the child was already complete in the womb. It was whole days before. It was just a process of development. So the whole 9 months was just developing from one thing to another. But the actual birth of the child, when the child was conceived, that's like something from nothing, right? There was first just a seed, and all of a sudden became a human being. So that's even more amazing. So the fact of the matter is not. The fact of giving birth, coming from concealed to hide, revealed, there has to be a third element here. There's the concealed and there's the revealed, but there's a third element which is above both of them. In order for the child to actually come out, for it to be revealed from concealment, this takes a tremendously high force. And that's what it means that God, in order for the sea to split, said that God moved the sea with a east wind. According to the normal natures, even spiritual nature, to come from intellect to emotions, until thought, until speech, it's impossible that it should be from ayin bebechinas yesh sovet. There can't be a movement from one level to another unless there's some super godly power which initiates this change. It's a level of godliness which is higher than all of these levels we're talking about, Atzilut, Bria, that all of them are equal in comparison to this essence of God, which is revealed in order to make the change of giving birth from one level to another. And that's what it's called Ruach Kadim. That's why the sea split. There was an eastern wind that blew. By means of this, that's what it says in the Torah. I mean, it takes away sort of from the miracle, right? God split the sea. No, it wasn't God split the sea. There was a big, strong eastern wind that blew. And that's so where's the miracle? It was a strong one. It says, no, this eastern wind that blew, this is hinting at a high, tremendously aspect of God. High aspect of God. Kiyayom, this aspect of the sea, which covers over and hides, this is only in Hishtalshus. This is just an aspect of the chain of creation. But to reveal this light which is above, it transforms the water into a dry land. So there has to be a higher level. That's what it says in the Zohar. God said to Moses, don't cry out to me. So the whole thing depends on Atik Yomim. In other words, this is a level higher than you can possibly reach by any work that you do in the world. Shemisham Nimshach, there's drawn down this power to be birth. When there's this big revelation, Then the mountains danced. The mountains, that's the emotions of God. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet. And the Gavot, that's Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet also of the next lower level, Bria, or Netzach, Yehod, Yesod, anyway, not aspect of Atzilus. So it says, when there's this big revelation, so Malchut is afraid, but all the levels above it, they have love, they appreciate this big revelation that causes birth. The Yocheim Lamaila, because they are above this level of the Yom, which is Tzimtzum, contraction of the level of Atzilut, we said. Therefore, all these aspects of God, which are above Malchut, which we said conceals, all these aspects, they're happy. They're dancing around, Ke'elim, like goats or whatever, Shagile, or that the revelation of the Soviv Kol Omim, of this light of the essence of God, which is above all the worlds, that makes them happy. Ner lifnei avuka, right? It's like almost like if you give $10 billion to a poor person on the street, he doesn't know what to do with it, he'll start shaking. Give $10 billion to a millionaire, right? A person that has $1 million in the bank, oh, he's happy, now he can invest. He has an idea of what to do with it. The same thing is these higher aspects of God were very tremendously happy with this revelation. But the lower aspects of God, which is Malchut, it says it was afraid. It was Hagam, even though Shagami de Shabbos, even though that every Shabbat that says there's also a raising up of the worlds by this. So why is it so happy? It says because every Shabbat everything goes up, but this, so it's not in a way of dancing, but on the what happened on Kriyas Yamsuf, when the sea split, there was a revelation at once. Harikud Aliyah Gadola. This is a big jump. Shaloba Darga Kala, without any comparison at all. Dainu Ba'ora Soviv Kalmim, and the light of Soviv Kalmim. Ke'elim. She'ein B'em Das, they haven't got any knowledge, any awareness of what it is. B'shosh B'chinazu, Hu B'chinas Lamayla Miyadas, because this revel is above knowledge. Okay, so what's the Rebbe saying? The Rebbe is saying like this. When the Jews got out of Egypt, that began a process of revealing God in the world. When he took the Jews out of Egypt, they were concerned with themselves. They couldn't appreciate this revelation. But when they got to the Yam, to the sea, and it split, it was physically, it wasn't a necessary thing for them. God could have destroyed all the Egyptians back then. When they got to the sea, this was when God was telling them, okay, now start to appreciate me. Appreciate me. So it says, therefore, there was a big revelation of godliness, something like the revelation that was going to be on Mount Sinai. Something like the revelation that was in the Holy of Holies. That revelation was revealed when the Jews crossed over the sea, giving the Jews a little bit of a taste of what they're supposed to accomplish in this world. There's two ways of accomplishing this. One way by means of loving God, and another way by fearing God. Loving God is you have an appreciation of what God is. Fearing God means you have no appreciation of God. It's just too awesome for you. Just too awesome. Both of them are really necessary. Both of them, loving God means that you're sort of the boss. Fearing God means that you feel that God is the boss. And you have to have both of these things together. That's why we say in our prayers, Avinu Malkeinu. God, you are our Father and our King. A father, this is like the higher levels of the Jewish souls. They love God like a father. But a king, this is the lower levels of the soul that we just take orders, we don't understand anything. It says that's the higher levels, they danced. They were happy. Of all Yam, but the sea, this is the end of all levels. This is what conceals, when it saw this big revelation of Soviv Ka'omim that God revealed at Mount Sinai, at the sea, Yam Suf, as Loya Yochol, they couldn't bear this like a Ner B'fnei Avuka. They couldn't dance and jump, and like a little flame jumps into a big flame, like the mountains did. Kahari Hu Malim, because these lower souls, they are concealed. That's this level of Malchut. It says Vayanus, they ran away. They ran away. Vayanus Havar Vahavarta Bistalkut Ahelem. This is trying to run away from the reaction of the aspect of Malchut. It's so far away from God when it's revealed, so it can't take it. It runs away. Like, for instance, a person should be shtalshlus, should be shtalshlus misecho ad ledibur of a kashenofel riboy, or like a person when he thinks of an idea and it comes into his mind, he can digest it, and little by little he can chew it up until he's able to speak about it. But when there comes a big idea which is above his understanding, then he can't talk. It becomes paralyzed. That's also the same thing about Moses. Kavod peh. Moses says he had a speech impediment. Why? And also prayer is in quiet because we're appealing to and connecting to a level which is higher than our ability to manifest. And so therefore it paralyzes us. So that's what happened in Yam Suf. At Yam Suf, it said that the mountains danced. Those are the Jews that had more of an appreciation of God. They were happy. But the simple Jews, the regular Jews, which, as I said, 99% of the Jews, says they ran away. They were afraid. Says, well, that was the same thing that was happening in the upper worlds. All of this is why Bifnei Adon Chuli Oretz. This is all from one psalm in we say in the Psalms. We say it also in Hallel every day. It says Bifnei Adon Chuli Oretz. Before the Master, the world was afraid. This revelation of Soviv Kolomim, of the essence of God, Hahov Chitzur, which transforms a big mountain, the Chalomish, and the Motze Eish that takes out fire from what's concealed, Liot Agamayim. It took a stone, a hard flint stone that usually brings out fire, and it transformed it to water. Hainu Migvuros Lechesed, namely, what does it mean? That God transformed from Gevura, limitation, to being unlimited. She's Batlam Mitziosam. That the simple Jews, they became completely negated to the essence of God. All of this was on Passover. Asher Pesach Hashem, when God jumped over, and they jumped over the mountains of Achakach. But afterwards, right, there was the mitzvah of counting the Omer, 49 days. So what happened? The Jews were slaves. They had no idea of freedom, of serving anything except for Paro. Paro was the most disgusting person in the world, and they were lower than him. They were his servants. And they were satisfied as long as he didn't kill them. That's what they were. All of a sudden, Moses took them out of Egypt, and he said, now you're going to be the servants of God. You're going to have to do what God wants. From the Paro, who was the most low, disgusting, or the most simple and debauched desires in the world, and they were serving him, they just had to keep quiet. All of a sudden, we have God who's creating all good, is creating the whole world, and now they're his servants. They're the servants of God. What are they supposed to do? So they don't know. First of all, they're just interested in getting away from Egypt. And then Moses says, okay, now I want to really introduce you to your new master, to God. The sea is going to split. They're standing in front of the sea splits. The simple Jews, when they saw this, they were knocked out, totally knocked out. It says that they ran away. They were just, their whole being was just scrambled up. And the higher level of Jews, more spiritual, whatever you want, they were happy. They had tremendous love. And really, all the Jews had both of them together, both of these together. And this shook them up. It changed their whole personalities. It was supposed to, at least. And they couldn't take it. It was too much. They were dancing, they were running, they were scared. But afterwards, they had what's called Sfirat Omer, counting the Omer. That's the 49 days from the day after Passover. Then the Jews started to serve. This is already an arousal from below. And by means of this, it was afterward on Shavuot, the holiday of Shavuot, which that's going to be 50 days after they get out of Egypt. Then they saw God face to face at Mount Sinai. So the Rebbe just explained to us why it is that the sea ran away, because the sea represents the low aspect of God, where God is not revealed. The mountains, which is a high aspect of God, which God is, yes, revealed. And when God revealed himself totally at the splitting of the sea, so the mountains that they were a higher level, they were happy to get more. And the sea, which that's a lower level, so they were afraid. They never dream that they would be able to receive any godliness. And so these two levels introduce them to what God is, serving God from love and fear. And in the 49 days of counting the Omer, they internalize this into their day-to-day work until they receive the Torah, which we can use all this in order to serve God from love and from fear. And the Torah is the third aspect, that's called Tiferet, beauty, to put it into our day-to-day life. Now, let us learn a small speech of the Rebbe. Here we go.